Hello, good evening. How are you, all of you? Today we'll be discussing a chapter number 8, the PR, the role during crisis. It's from the book Service Marketing and Public Relation in the Aviation Industry. So now what is PR? That is, PR is a public relation, the role during the crisis, how it is helpful and what all we are supposed to learn in this chapter. We'll understand the aim and the objective and the role of the PR during the crisis, like how the public relations and these strategies help for the crisis management, and the steps for the PR public relation processes, the defining problems, programming, planning, and what actions and communication they're supposed to do, and the evaluation. So, planning is very important for the crisis management. It's very important as the information and the news travels much faster these days as before if we compare to our earlier days. Organizations should be proactive in handling the questions and allegations regarding the looming crisis. If anything happens in the company, nowadays the media is very fast and unfortunately it's a paid media also. So in order to get the correct information or in order to maintain the image of the company should be proactive, management should be proactive, so that the correct information would go and it would not harm the image of the company. There are a number of examples of the organization that are not able to deal with the crisis management correctly. Generally, most companies are not prepared in advance. They do not plan prior. Suddenly something happens and then they take action and then they lag behind. So when the organization, they might try invading the situation and might toughing it more and make it a belief the crisis will pass. But this does not solve the purpose. Instead, they make the situation worse. So organizations should not waste their time in the crisis arise, as they can impact their revenue generation and falling stock prices also. So during the crisis, the organization most important vital asset is the risk and the reputation and the image that they might have spent years on building. So it's useless to hide the information or the truth from the company, as ultimately someone will blow out the whistle, means someone else would tell, and then it will be very difficult to get a hold of the situation or control or get the situation under control and still maintain the image of the company. So now as the managing crisis is very important at each and every organization, in every company, any organization. There are three smarts way. There are the so first is avoid the crisis in first place, means it should never happen. You should always try be active and let it not happen at all. So avoid the crisis. Second, quickly address and resolve the crisis issue before they intensify. Mean if something happens, don't let it increase, don't let it get intensify, just quickly address and resolve it. Now the third is seek possible way to turn your crisis into opportunity. At times it happened like during the current pandemic. Now the mask business and gloves business, sanitizer business, disinfectant business has actually bloomed. So there are people who have actually, it was the crisis time, but they have converted into opportunity. So it was just an example. Now the role of PR during the crisis, the public relations consultants. There are PR consultants. They plays a very important role during the crisis in preserving and refining their organization relationship by communicating effectively with the public. For example, let's say example of an airline. Let's say some crash happens or some incidents happen where whole country, whole world, and the people who are directly involved, passengers, passenger family, their meters, the greeter, and generally the competition because in the other company, other airline. So if something happens, if the airline is not imparting correct information, is not giving the correct information, then it will cause a bad image. So there are the public relation consultant. They plays an essential role during the crisis if anything happen, and they help in preserving and refining the organization relationship by communicating effectively with the public. So public relation practitioners are not usually accountable for determining the underlying problem that generate the crisis situation. They cannot individually govern the organization action. Public relation role is to help stabilize the environment by developing public relation strategies and messages which result in a rapid, authentic, useful and concerned communication with a significant internal and external audiences. So means they are the professionals who handle this kind of situation, and they saves the image of the company or whichever organization they are working for. So what are the role of PR, public relations? So audit, scenario planning, risk analysis and contingency plans. So now we will be discussing all these 3 points one by one. Audit. So it's the first important step at the time of planning crisis management in the audit. During this step, the public relation executive needs to forecast the possible threat to the organization. Means when audit happens, they assess the situation, they discuss these are the shortfall, this can actually lead to this and so problem. So audits. Now the scenario planning. The second role of public relation executive is the scenario planning. Scenario planning aims to develop the flexible plan to deal with the possible crisis. Means anything which can happen. So they think about the scenarios, they think about the situation. If this happens, this can actually lead to such problem, this problem, that problem. So they understand the shortfalls, like whatever the presently happening or existing in the situation of the system. It takes account of the known facts with educated guesses, and for instance the public reactions of the press to the news that an employee has committed fraud. So what are the first thing that might happen to your client or to your organization? Is the second method the scenario planning. Like what bad can happen, so they take a backup plan, so that if any case if some situation happen, they always have a plan B or the other plan to cover it up and to understand the situation. So this is the scenario scenario planning. Means if this happen, they would do this. If that happen, they would do that. Risk analysis and contingency planning. There are some crisis management planning that can be put in a place in advance a crisis occurs. A crisis needs to be very rapid response. A crisis needs a very rapid response, so that it is a good to have a basic plan in place. So means we cannot like suddenly something happens and then you're using hit and trial method to solve the situation. No. So we should always analyze and we should have a contingency planning if some problem happens. So this is the planning, and we'll be following these situation, these guidelines in order to tackle with the situation. Crisis needs a very rapid response, so that it is a good to have a basic. So it's good to have a basic plan in place. Identification and severity of the type of risk can be measured by the organization by means of risk analysis and understanding the situation, what can happen. And the contingency planning will prepare people, for instance, by providing a media training to important spokesperson who may be called on in a crisis. Now we have reached on a topic of this peer strategy for crisis management, public relations strategies for the crisis management at 8.2.1. So whenever the crisis occurs, you need to act swiftly and assertively to limit the damage. So you should understand, you should have a plan. So this can be done with the help of the crisis management plan. But every crisis will not be similar. You need to assess the best way to respond. So best way to respond, we are supposed to follow some strategies. And those strategies are monitor, manage, respond, and reassess. How do we monitor? We collect the available information, quickly prepare the thorough assessment of the facts, what all is happening, what you are supposed to do, listen to the stakeholders, take our guidelines, take our information from the experts, from the senior, and manage. How do we manage? Decide the key messages that you need to give to the stakeholders and the best way to reach the group. Brief any spokesperson and make them to speak to the media. So that is how you're managing the situation. Now respond. It is necessary to react rapidly. The lack of information will give the public or the media space to speculate that whether they are not prepared, or this is the fault of someone, or somebody is at fault, it is the airline mismanagement or the company's mismanagement. So that's how, if the lack of information will give the public and the media to space to speculate, and rumors and speculations may be far more damaging than the normal original crisis. Responding quickly may let you to direct the narrative of the crisis and limit the damage. Connect to the stakeholders by a appropriate channel and by both traditional in the social media. Be honest and remember that the people are more probable to forgive an organization if they are open and appears to want to address the issue. Now reassess. How do we reassess? Some stakeholders will remain unhappy in spite of how good your communications are. In this, you need to respond like how you're supposed. You need to decide and how you respond to the situation. At times, it may be better to stay quiet. But if you feel, you may still be able to change the outlook and prepare the appropriate communication. Now, what are timelines? So we should always have a frame of timeline, like these are so and so time limit that we are supposed to complete, or understand the situation and complete the work. So it is always advisable to frame a timeline once you have identified the crisis. Timeline will help you to indicate the task you need to do in order of the priority, so as to monitor, manage and respond the crisis situation. It will always ensure to complete each activity in a particular time frame effectively to handle the crisis and not spending too much long time on one particular thing. Now the line of communication. Line of communication is internal and external. All lines should be open. You need to keep your own people informed along with ensuring your key messages are communicated clearly to the stakeholder and to the public. It is also significant that you monitor and listen the feedback in reaction to the crisis of your key messages. Now let's check our progress. Let's filling the blanks. It says it's important to keep our internal and external lines of communication open. Correct? Now the scenario planning aims to produce flexible plan to deal with a potential crisis. Like they're understanding, they're thinking, they're pre-planning that this kind of scenario happen, what they're supposed to do. So it's very important. So scenario planning aims to produce the flexible plans to deal with the potential crisis. Now the topic number 8.3, 4 steps public relation process. We have a step 1, defining the PR problem using the SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis has we have external factor which we're supposed to be reading, that this opportunity strategies, threat strategies, weakness strategies, opportunity strategies, weakness threat strategies, what all we are supposed to do. So our step 1 is defining the PR problem. The main step is to define the problem. This include either formal research or the informal research to collect information the best to describe what is going to be formative search. And search is the search used to understand the situation with the help of formulative strategies. So basically, it is the process of defining a problem, like what exactly the situation is. Either you are including it in a formal way or an informal way. So it's the research going on to understand and define the problem. Now there are numerous ways to collect the data that is required to fully understand the situation using the SWOT analysis. What is SWOT analysis? SWOT analysis is a very common tool of analyzing the situation with a SWOT. SWOT is strength, weakness, opportunity, threats. So these are the analysis which we do. So this analysis breakdowns into the situation looking into internal and the external that might be contributing to the situation. So we get some problem, let's say some crisis happen. So then we see what are the strengths, what are the weakness, what are the opportunity, what are the threats. So these external factor take account of the opportunity threat prevailing in the organization environment. So the first step is to look into the strength and weakness of the organization. Okay, what are the qualities we have? What are the weakness we have? For example, in case of aviation, like I always talk about the airline, I always give the example of the airline. This aviation company may have a strong relationship with the member of media and has made a good employee morale and is economically sound, and it has a culture that values modernization. But what is a weak association with the environmental group and the neighborhood relation, and has a culture that encourages the confidence in the decision. So the external factors, opportunities, threats are usually the reason the organization finds itself in the situation. Once you have conducted the SWOT analysis, you can frame the possibility strategies by combining the internal and external factors. So strength opportunity strategies focus on the organization's strength to capitalize the external opportunities. Now the strength threat strategies. It uses the organization strength to counter the external threats. Weakness opportunities. It addresses and improve the organizational weakness to the better equipped to take the benefit from the external opportunities. Weakness is its attempt to correct the organization weakness to defend against the external threats. All these you need to remember. You'll be answering all these highlighted stuff in your chapters. These are very important, so when you answer you should understand. So now we have come on step number 2, that is 8.3.2, planning and programming. So it involves planning and programming that revolving and capitalizing the situation, recognizing the problem or the situation which you're dealing with. So it's like now the strategic plan and the objective furnish the direction of measurable and the specific outcome needed to fulfill the goal. So now we have got a goal to achieve. That good objective means the criteria given below. So we have like planning and programming is we are planning something. We have assigned one goal. That goal we need to get. Our aim is to achieve the goal. And how do we achieve the goal? The goal render the way the strategic plan and the objective furnish. So what objective we have, what planning we have. So now it says end and not means to an end. Objective has to be an outcome that leads to the goal. Our objective, what objectives we have assigned for the goal is, it should have outcome that leads to the goal, finishing or achieving the goal. Now it has 3 potential outcomes of this objective: cognitive, attitudinal, behavioral. Cognitive is like understanding, remembering and awareness of the situation, what happened, what is happening, and how we are supposed to. It's going to help us in the future. It's related to the understanding. Attitudinal, it creates the positive attitude and it changes the negative attitude. Behavioral is like reinforcing positive behavior and changes the negative behavior. So now measurable objective, the objective which we are assigning for the achieving the goal should also help the public relation professionals to be held in a reasonable for their efforts. Public relations must engross only in tactics and strategies that actually add to the larger organization goals. Time frame, you need to be effective and efficient in meeting the objective. That the time frame which you have restated according to that. Now identify the public. It's always be better to identify the overall objective prior to trying them in a public. What I was saying is it's always important and better to identify the overall objective prior to trying them to the public. So before telling to the public, you should understand what you are saying and what your intentions are. This will enable to think which the publics are associated to the objective. Okay. Now the research may have found the messages are getting blocked in the middle management, which has many people who have an undesirable attitude about the meeting and are not inspiring the employees. Now the objective should advance overall business. As an example, increase in sale, retain employees, increase share values, reduce litigation, improve social possibilities, responsibility. They must also be written in the limitation of possibility, public relation outcome. So the increase of sales of product by 20% over the 6 months among the younger consumer and increase awareness of the product. Usually there is a hierarchy to the various level of objective, which identifies the output, outtakes and outcomes. So it's like the objective, what are the outputs of the objective, what it outtakes and what are the outcomes. Now we will continue this finishes the part 1 and I will be discussing output, outtakes, outcomes in the next part. Thank you. Please revise and understand and listen carefully. It's a very important chapter and little difficult also. Thank you.